Hi, this is Ashley Kang of Espn Esports. I'm joined by Alice, the caster of LCK, the coach of BBQ Olivers, and a streamer for CLG. And he's just gonna join me to talk about his experience on casting for LCK Spring Split. Hey,
Hi, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I am okay. Just got done casting for today.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you actually just casted a game between SK Telecom T1 and Kings and Dragon X, which was a pretty hype match. And how did the casting go?
SK Telecom actually came out a lot stronger than I was expecting. I thought that the match would have been a lot closer today, whereas game one, it looked like Kingzone were doing really, really well in the bottom lane, which I wasn't expecting against Teddy. But then in game two, it was just an absolute slaughter. So it was pretty quick, 2-0. And SKT look like they keep getting better and better as the split draws on.
So in general, Alice, this is your first time casting LCK since spring 2017, I believe. Yeah. And you're now also casting in a new venue, which is the LoL Park, a pretty fancy venue, yes. In fact. How has the experience been for you so far? We're more than halfway into Spring Split.
So I was really nervous originally to come back to casting. It had been quite a while, and I thought that expectations would actually be higher now. And so getting into it, I was really afraid, but everything actually went really well, and it seems like the feedback's been really positive. And casting at the LoL Park, the venue is just so much better than anything I had experienced in the past apart from Worlds in 2016. Everything's just fantastic here. The staff are great. The entire venue is great. The atmosphere, the heating, everything's just perfect because Green Winters can be really cold. And I remember casting spring 2017, I was freezing a lot of the time. So, and then also the food here is actually quite good. So it's nice. Everything's good.
And also, as a Calicaster, you get to cast with two different other LCK caster, who is Atlas, Max Anderson, and also Brandon Valdez, aka Valdez. So how has your experience been casting with each of those casters, and how has the synergy been like so far?
The synergy, I think, is actually going really, really well. Interestingly enough, so Atlas and I had very few interactions before I casted this split. We had met and talked at Worlds. I think I casted with him once at Worlds. And so, in a weird way, though, me and Atlas have a lot more jokes and banter between us when we're casting, whereas with Brendan, who's someone I've been friends with for 5 years now, I think, I'm much more analytical and diving into the game a lot more when I cast with him. And it's sort of, it's weird because if you would have asked me what I would have expected, I would have thought it would have been the opposite. Like, I'd be much more analytical with Atlas, who I didn't have a 5-year relationship with. But I think everything's going really great.
And also, there's another thing that I wanted to ask. So you're currently casting for LCK, which is the Korean championships, which might be quite different from casting for EU, for example, for NA, yes, which is completely English-based. You're casting for a broadcast that's mainly tailored for the Korean audience, the players, and the in-game comm is also in Korean. So what is that like? How is it different from, let's say, casting for OCE, NA, EU, an English cast, so to speak?
For the most part, there's a higher quality of gameplay, which makes it a lot easier. It's not to say that EU and NA don't have some good teams, but even the middle-of-the-pack Korean teams, I think, are going to have higher-level game quality than middle-of-the-pack NA or EU teams, and so that's refreshing. Although there is a lot of concern regarding this split with Korea, where some of the middle-of-the-pack teams and the lower-end teams do look really weak right now. But it makes it a lot easier for me. I've always been someone that has been very, very focused on pushing higher standards and expecting higher level of play, and so it sort of falls in line with what I want to be casting and talking about. And so I guess that would probably just be the major difference, is Korea is, it's more stable and structured, whereas if I tune into North America or Europe, they're more sporadic with their gameplay, and it's much more difficult for me to predict what would be happening, and I don't enjoy that as much. Okay. Yeah.
And speaking of level of play, and you just mentioned that LCK does it an interesting split, so to speak, and one of the defining variables of LCK display is the domination of Griffin, who has been like completely overwhelming LCK, and we haven't seen something like this since 2015 SKT almost. But the other flip side of it is everyone's saying, hey, is Griffin just that good, or has the LCK as a region like decreased in level of play? And that's the question that everyone's been asking. So how do you feel about the domination of Griffin as well as the overall level of play in LCK at the moment?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that Griffin has something going for it that we haven't seen in a very long time, which is they have such innate, strong, fundamental gameplay. And then Chovy is looking a lot like the new Faker in a way. And so it's sort of like a second wind in a sense, where the team is just so strong. But in the same light, I do think that there's a lot of truth that LCK is looking a lot weaker. And so a lot of people are looking forward to MSI, where they're expecting Griffin will win Sprint Split and then go on to face the big teams around the world. But I'm pretty confident Griffin is likely the best in the world right now. Yeah, Griffin's Neo from the Matrix.
And talking about strong teams, another team that was really hyped up at the beginning of the split was SK Telecom T1. You know, they kept Faker, the chosen ones, and they brought out all this like top players from every other team, such as Khan, you know, Teddy, Mara, and they haven't provided a significant challenge to Griffin just yet. So how do you feel about SKT's state so far, as well as the next big game that's coming up on LCK is SKT versus Griffin? So what are your predictions on that match?
This match, if you had asked me this prior to watching the King Zone series, I would have said that I think Griffin just takes it kind of handily. But if SK Telecom can play to a level that they showed today, I think that they can put up a lot more of a fight. But I'm worried about the drafts because I genuinely think that SK Telecom, one of the weakest departments that they have going on right now is that the drafts can get very wonky, whereas Griffin is very unpredictable inside of the draft component. And I'm also worried about what's going to happen in the games against Chovy, Faker. I think the dynamics are very scary, and I'm not sure if SKT is fully up to par yet with Griffin. But I guess if you would ask if there's any other team in the league right now that maybe could challenge them, I think at this point in time it's SKT. I think that they are officially the second best.
Okay. And finally, so we just talked about, you know, performance LCK as well as the performance of the top teams such as Griffin and SKT. So many people are comparing LCK to LPL this year, and how LCK is going to perform against LPL as we start seeing all the international tournaments coming up. So what are your predictions on that, especially given the context of the rise of Griffin?
I think LCK this year, come summer, like a lot of people looked at it as, well, what's going to happen to Korea in 2019 because they bombed out of Worlds. I think that the makings, Griffin will almost surely, I think, go to Worlds, and then SK Telecom look like they're continuously getting better. So I think that as long as SK Telecom stays on that path, Griffin and SKT, I think, are going to be really good candidates for repping them at Worlds. I'm not really sure yet, though, who the third team will be.
If you had to give one prediction, like, you know, if you had to just, like, bet on someone.
I'd probably bet on Damwon. Yeah, to be the third. Yeah, I would probably say Damwon. I think that there's way too much stuff going on with other rosters like Jin Air right now, Afrika, KT, Genji. There's just way too much going on that side of the bracket. So I think Damwon has the most stability going on right now. I actually think Sandbox is starting to tipper off, which is really sad because coming into the split, they looked so strong. They looked like actually the only second team. And what I mean by that is, like, when you watch their gameplay, they didn't have these star players in every single role. But the way that they moved in harmony and the way that they operated was very team-like, whereas other teams looked like they were sort of playing individually. They didn't really have an identity to them. And I think that as the split continues to draw on, Sandbox look like they're getting weaker as other teams are getting better. And, yeah.
So there we have it. The hot take of the interview is Damo's going to be the third team of the Worlds. And you heard it from first. You've heard it from here first. So thank you for the interview.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yep, this was Ashley Kang for ESPN Esports. I was joined by LS, the caster for LCK, as many other things. And for more League of Legends content, check out espn.com/esports.